Hello, my name is Zach Rye with Old Man Gaming. This is another Snap Judgment review. What is a Snap Judgment review if you've never listened before? Well, I think reviewers nowadays get a little too caught up in 100%ing or near completing a game that they are reviewing. They forget what it's like right in the beginning to be playing it. So I'm trying to give you an idea whether you're going to enjoy it right away or not. So I only do about 5 to 10 hours with the game. That coupled with the fact that I think games are one of the most subjective forms of art, I'm not going to give a score to this review. Instead, I'm going to tell you an overview of what the game is. I'm going to give you the pros and the cons of the game from my point of view. And I'm going to tell you whether I personally will be sticking with this game outside the purposes of this content. So, all those disclaimers out of the way. One last one to go. Obviously, my voice is still a little rough, still recovering from that nasty flu B a couple of weeks ago. So bear with me, everybody. Also, this game is a little bit old. I believe it was released August 14th of 2025. So it's a good 6 months old, but I have recently purchased it thanks to the Steam Spring Sale, which I believe is still going on as far as this gets released. You still have a couple of days to get it if you want, for only like $20, $24, something like that. The game is Dice Gambit. So let's get into Dice Gambit. What is Dice Gambit? Well, Dice Gambit, unbeknownst to the name, is a game in which it is kind of if you took fights in tight spaces, you remove the card element to it and put a dice element in, and then you combine that with Darkest Dungeon and made it a little bit more comedic than dark, you'd probably have something akin to Dice Gambit. The idea behind this game is that there is this city called Neotalis, which is ruled by 3 big royal families. It also has a problem, this thing called the chromatic disease. Basically, no one knows what causes it, but some people slowly turn into chromatics, which are these weird multicolored goo monsters that then go around turning other people into goo monsters and attacking people. You take up the role of a character that you create, custom character creation, but it's the Inquisitor. Basically, you are the child of the Inquisitor that died, or somehow related to them, the last relative of the last Inquisitor. So you kind of inherit the role, which means you get a mansion, which you owe a ton of money on already, and your job is now to kind of work with these 3 very psychotic families and try and clean up the chromatic disease, earning rewards along the way. The actual aesthetic is very kind of like almost neo-Roman, if that's a thing. And it definitely has that feel, that kind of weird hedonism feel. The art style is also very strange. It's kind of a very skinny, almost creepy anime sort of style, which is something we will talk about later in the con. But the actual loop to this game is very interesting. You basically go on these expeditions, which then bring you to kind of like a spot map in which you can only see icons around you. Those icons can maybe give you gold, maybe they'll give you extra energy. You have only so much energy to move through the entire expedition. And you have to get to the last spot, which is a boss spot, and close a portal, which stops the chromatics from attacking there. To do this, you also have to get married. And marriage just kind of happens. You put your character into kind of like a suitor spot, and then 2 potential suitors appear, and you pick one of them to marry to. Then you unlock something called an incubator, where you can then take a couple and have a child who's 18 years old and ready to fight, without any of the fun stuff that goes into making a kid. So it's very weird and interesting. On the other side, you also have relationships with all 3 of these big families and the characters within those big families. As you make contacts and you increase your standing with them by doing missions for them, they will unlock classes that you can spec your characters into via the academy. These classes are very, very interesting and have a host of different abilities. The combat itself takes place kind of like on a grid-based kind of thing, with you rolling a bunch of dice, and then those dice the result of those dice can give you action. So like a shield will be a defensive action. A little movement will be a movement action. The swords will be an attack action. Then there's a signature, which is like if you roll that, it's your character's special ability. And then there's also a kind of a wild that you can use for anything. What makes it even more interesting is as your character learns abilities, the abilities can be triggered based on the dice results. So like you might have an ability that allows you to like chain whip somebody to you and deal a ton of damage, but you need a movement point. You need a movement dice. You also need an attack dice, and maybe you need a defense dice to do that. If you don't roll those results, you can't actually attempt that special maneuver. You get a certain number of rerolls a turn. I think it's like 2, which is communal among all your characters. And yeah, that's the game. You kind of go into these expeditions, you work through them best you can, you fight off the abilities, you level up your characters to come back to kind of create new characters and new classes and make new stuff and take on new challenges. And as the story progresses, other things will happen over the course of it. The first act is just about kind of your getting used to the game and kind of reclaiming your Inquisitor's mansion. And then the second act is about saving a reactor, which has this big time limit of 6 weeks. And you have to get your characters to a certain level by 6 weeks so you can do this really tough mission. What's interesting, though, and I was very afraid that that was going to be the thing every time, but once I completed that reactor mission, the next kind of special mission had one of my favorite characters being kidnapped, and to rescue them, I had to be in a certain place at a certain time. I think that it does have a lot of variation so far. I think it could potentially get old, but like I said, I'm just at the 5 hours, so it's tricky to really make that claim. But right now, I'm really thinking about going back to it anytime I can. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We got to do the pros and the cons, right? So I always like to go positive first. So we'll start with the pros. The pros, I love the tactics in this game. I love the way that this game kind of works through those tactics. It's very straightforward and run-of-the-mill. I will say something that I almost put down as a con that might put some people off is you don't really get cover in this game. There's a couple of things you can't shoot through, but overall, you can shoot through just about any object. The only real thing that objects do is make it so that you can't move through them, and that's only the basic move. Like if I have an ability that allows me to dash, I can dash through a solid object. It doesn't matter, which is tricky. It makes it a much more aggressive playstyle for when you're in there and doing a lot of fighting. Than a defensive one. And really, when you look at this from a tactics point of view, this game is all about unchecked aggression. It's about moving and killing as fast as humanly possible. And it's not really about defending. There's only really one defensive action. There's a couple of other defensive powers in there that can help you out, but those really are just a means to an end of murdering the chromantics in front of you. I really like the marriage system and the child system. I think it's really cool that basically as you level up your kind of like influence with other characters, your ability to have more and more people in your family levels up as well. And then those characters, so like each time you go into a mission, your character will become exhausted with every little thing they do. Every time they go into a fight, their stamina will start to go down. Your stamina has I think 4 or 5 hash marks on it. And every time you cross a hash mark, your stats will drop by 8 to 15%, which is interesting. Your characters actually get worn out after a while. So having a bigger and bigger family allows you to give a break to some characters and let other characters get in there and level. There's also, I believe there's permadeath. I'm not 100% positive. I haven't had anybody die for me yet. So far, the difficulty has not really been there. So I can't really say what that is. There's a place to heal and a place to auto-build stamina for gold. But you're also trying to build down a huge, $1 million debt on your house with the 3 families. And they take whatever's left over each week, so there's never a surplus of money that you have. So you always have to be careful that you're either spending it all or you're leaving enough to buy down that debt a little bit. But I really think that the marriage system and the incubation system is very cool and interesting. I like the way you build out a family super fast at a rapid pace. And I think it's cool. It definitely gets me very attached to the characters within it. And then the class system I think is really cool. I love the idea of getting to know people so that they are willing to teach you what they do. And the classes are very inventive and interesting, especially the abilities I think are really cool. And they all seem to kind of feed off each other too. So it's very easy to build out a character to do one thing really well. There's this ability called temporal daggers where you get them for a turn and they're like free attacks without doing any sort of like rolls, but they're at lower damage. But there's multiple different abilities that will give you temporal daggers. I have one character built out so that by the end of the turn, they always have like 5 to 10 temporal daggers that I could just start chucking at people. Really satisfying stuff like that if you put thought into your character and how you're building your character, it makes it very interesting and cool. And then let's go on to the cons. All right, so the cons... Okay, there's 2 things that kept me from playing this as long as I did, because this has actually been in my recommends on Steam for a long time. But every time I come to it, the art style puts me off, and the fact that it's called Dice Gambit puts me off. The name of the game makes it sound kind of like a Yahtzee game or a board game of some sort, which I think is a little bit of a miss. And as far as the art style, you guys out there, art is very subjective. So you guys out there might really love the art style, or some of you might really hate it, like me. So I'm not necessarily saying that's a con, but I have to point out that like that art style just kept me from getting into it for a really long time. And it sucks because this is actually a really, really good game. But some of you might really love that art style. I think the name of the game is a problem. I think Dice Gambit doesn't really make sense to me. I think that like it would be really way cooler if they named it something after the game or something in the game. Dice Gambit, like I said, feels like a Yahtzee game or something. So I never really looked twice until it was in this sale. And I'm glad that I got it on this sale because it's worth it. It's worth every penny that I spent, which I think was like $17 to $20, something there. And I believe it's on sale until the 26th of March. This review should be going up on the 23rd of March, 2026. So if it's on sale, I highly recommend picking it up. Which brings me to whether or not I'm going to stick with it. Definitely, I'm really enjoying this game, completely regardless of the art style. I think that the way this thing builds out and the very satisfying kind of like rinse and repeat loop of this game is a lot of fun. Plus, they've put enough things in there that even though the loop is very similar, it changes in some different way each time. That's keeping me very interested and keeping me from getting sick of, the usual stuff. So I am definitely going to stick with it. But did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? You guys can let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys, as long as you guys keep watching and listening, I will keep making them. See you guys next time.